afternoon, everyone. Welcome. What an amazing turnout on a wet Friday afternoon. Thank you so much for facing the weather and the rain and the roads and being with us today. We really appreciate having you here. I'm Dr. Dawn Lindsay. I'm president of Arundel Community College, and I want to welcome you to AACC's Celebration of Life for Andrew Meyer. It is wonderful to see so many familiar faces as well as some new faces. So new faces, new friends. It's great. We thank you for being here as we pay tribute to one of our own, Dr. Andrew Meyer, who we all knew as Andy. Andy was not only a believer in education, he was a believer in AACC. While I did not have the opportunity to work with Andy here at AACC, I had the pleasure of getting to know him much better through the League of Innovation, where we both served on the board. I knew him to be a leader among leaders, and I'm honored that we can host this wonderful tribute to him and what he meant to AACC and to each of us. Today, you will hear reflections on three core attributes of Andy Meyer: innovation, excellence, and community. These remain guiding principles at AACC, and we carry them forward each year, every semester, every day. They appear in our college values and in our strategic plan. For our retirees, I'd like to share examples of some things that have continued to embrace the values that you set and build upon the foundation that you created. Thank you for your continued support and pride. AACC was listed as the #1 community college in the nation in 2021, the first year community colleges were included in a survey developed by academic influencers and announced by Forbes magazine. All of you, like Andy, made this institution an outstanding college, and it remains that way today. Innovation was a hallmark for Dr. Meyer's leadership, whether in continuing education and workforce development or throughout the entire division of learning. A reflection of how innovation remains a standard at AACC is our Health and Life Sciences building, which we managed to complete during a global pandemic, and it is beautiful. This $116 million, 175,000 square foot state-of-the-art building is LEED Gold certified, featuring environmentally sustainable practices. This building is the envy of our colleagues and has won multiple design awards for innovation and inspiring design. But more importantly, it provides our students with a creative, high-tech, interdisciplinary, and inspiring design. If you've not had a chance to see it, I hope you will find time to go over and look at the many hands-on workstations that we have, our computer-controlled mannequins that mimic patient conditions, and they even give birth, our simulation labs for clinical rotations that provide our students with real-world work experience. And excellence was another one of Andy's expectations. Andy modeled excellence, and he expected the same from his team. Another testimony of how we continue to evidence academic success was our March 2023 Mid-Atlantic site visit. I'm happy. So, you know, we all ignore these, right? We'll know if we have to leave. Okay. Another testimony of our continued evidence to academic excellence was our March 2023 Mid-Atlantic States accreditation visit. And I know people in here, you remember the tenacious type of people that come through when they do site visits for colleges. And I am very, very pleased and just wonderfully happy to share with you that AACC met each of the standards for the accreditation and received the visiting team's report from the self-study, you're not going to believe this, with no site requirements, no recommendations.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's us continuing to build on you, so thank you. In my 30 years of my career in community college, this is the first time I've ever heard of a college coming out of an accreditation site visit with no recommendations, but this team did it. This reflects the exceptional work of each of our faculty and our staff and their dedication to our students. Last, but certainly not least, is community. Of course, the word is in our name. Marty, you started talking about the communities college a long time ago, and we are still using those words. Today's event is an outstanding example of that, a celebration of someone who fostered community throughout his life. Andy would be very proud of the Clausen Center for Innovation and Skilled Trades. This building was created to meet the needs of employers who needed skilled trade workers and couldn't find them. The Clausen Center currently hosts 4 programs to meet a community need for skilled trades. It also represents Andy's core values of innovation, excellence, and community. For the first time in the history of our college, this was the first capital expenditure not funded by the county and the state. Our foundation raised the $5 million price tag, funded the building, and then turned the keys over to Sandra Moore, our chair of the Board of Trustees. A building for workforce development that trains and gets skilled workers into life-sustaining wage jobs. Andy, I know, would be proud of that one. His principles, his lessons, his memory continue to connect people from all over the country, as evidenced by the number of people in the audience today. This is a celebration, and while we are sad to have lost Andy, we will honor him with this special event. I'd also like to thank all the retirees that made this happen, but most special to me, my predecessor, Dr. Marty Smith. And now I would like to turn the mic over to our longtime legal counsel and friend and MC for the day, Marty Snyder.
I'll follow you.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, everyone. Nice weather, huh? So I'm Marty Smith. No, I'm Marty Snyder.
You
Keep on forgetting.
It's easy.
I'm your host today for the Andy Meyer Celebration for Life talk show. Along with my fabulous guest, Dr. Martha Smith, we're going to explore through a series of speakers, some live, some taped, the extraordinary life and accomplishments of one of the AAC's own, Dr. Andrew Meyer. For those who may not know, Dr. Smith was the president of AACC from 1994 until her retirement 18 years later in 2012. During her tenure, she not only led the college into the 21st century and established her own legacy, but was granted emeritus status by the Board of Trustees. Good morning, Marty.
Good afternoon, Marty.
Here we are back at the college for the first time, working together again, as we did for 18 years. Have you missed me?
Oh, have I missed you? Like a dog misses the bone, like a glove misses a hand. Yes, Marty, you're right. Being here at the college today with those in the audience and also those viewing the celebration of life for a truly amazing educational rock star and an incredible human being, Dr. Andy Meyer, brings back so many fond memories of the good times we all had together. And I want to thank you all for being here today as part of this. Marty, during your 36 years as counsel to the college, you not only worked with 3 different presidents, but with dozens, I'm sure dozens of changing Board of Trustees members. But you also worked with Dr. Meyer during each of his 23 years at AACC, so you got to know him very well. And so it's really a special treat to have you be part of this program in such a meaningful way, Marty. I remember when we first met. Prior to assuming the presidency in 1994, the then president, Dr. Thomas Florestano, took me to lunch to meet the college attorney. Well, I expected a suit and tie and a straight-laced lawyer. Instead, I got this totally zen guy who was cool, calm, collected, kind of handsome, who told me that from his point of view, the most important commodity at this college was relationships. He seemed to know everyone. He expounded on the many strengths of the college, its unique culture, and its excellent faculty and staff. And throughout the conversation, he kept saying to me, "You are going to love Andy Meyer. You are going to love Andy Meyer." And so it was.
So Dr. Smith, because we both are known as Marty, I've always been known as Marty too, I decided that you should go to a different name. And I think BW would be my pick, AKA Bionic Woman. After listening to your recorded home phone when you weren't there, aloha, you have reached Marty Smith. I am sorry I'm not unable to take your call at the moment, as I'm out surfing with my 2 new knees, my 2 new hips, and my newly hypoplasty L1 vertebrae. If you would like to return my call, your call, please leave your name and number, the date and time of your call with a brief message, and I will return your call just as soon as I wipe out. Mahalo, and have a hang 10 day. Aloha. Sounds like you've had a couple rough years, Marty.
Yes, Marty, I did. But here I am almost fit. And I'm here with my trusty oil can. And I am more than ready to celebrate our dear, dear friend and colleague, Andy Meyer.
You didn't tell me about the
I
oil
know
can.
that's a surprise for you.
You kept
Just
it
for
from
you.
me. So Marty, when you came to the college, what goals and expectations did the Board of Trustees place on your shoulders?
Well, it was made clear to me by the board that they were ready for and wanted a transformation of Anne Arundel Community College into a 21st century community college committed to preparing all of its students for the new information-driven cyber multicultural world that we were moving into. So we used students first and the vision of preparing 21st century workers and citizens as guiding principles of this transformation. After spending the first few years visiting each of the divisions and getting to know people, it was also very clear that there was one area of the college already fully engaged in this transformation, and that was the Division of Continuing Education and Workforce Development, led by Dr. Andy Meyer. So when in 2000, the current Vice President for Academic Affairs left, it was the time and opportunity to make a major organizational change to reflect our mission as a learning-centered college by creating a brand new position of Vice President for Learning, probably the first in the country, and have that position oversee all learning offerings in the college, treating them as equal in importance under the law, so to speak, and administered by one uniquely skilled, exceedingly knowledgeable administrator who kept his eyes on the future and had creativity and innovation running through his veins. Sounds like Dr. Meyer to me. So knowing he had the full and enthusiastic support of me as president and all of his colleague vice presidents, and an exceedingly talented and dedicated team of direct reports, Dr. Meyer accepted this very challenging position, and the rest, as they say, is history, a remarkable history at that.
So let's all take a moment. Forget the rain. Forget it's Friday. Forget there's traffic out there after. Forget all the things you have to do. Let's close our eyes. Come on. Let's take a deep breath, cleansing in and out. Now conjure up your image of Andy Meyer. Now open your eyes. John?
Well, I was just, I was so moved when I heard about this, and I'm sure brothers and Sister Carol were too. You know, Andy never bragged or blew his own horn about what he did and his accomplishments. And we knew what his job was, and we knew how much he loved his work, but he never talked much about his own personal accomplishments. And when Suzanne called me shortly after Andy passed away, and expressed her shock and the shock that some of the staff were relaying to her. I was just overwhelmed. It has been very overwhelming to hear from people, to receive cards from people, and then to know this is happening. It's just, I think Andy would be very, very happy and pleased with this. Well, kind of a funny thing, Andy might have been the least mechanical person on the face of the earth. And his dad was an auto mechanic. All three of us older brothers were very mechanically inclined. And Andy used to joke about getting the evil eye from our dad when he didn't know the difference between an open end wrench and a box wrench, or a Phillips screwdriver and a slotted screwdriver. And when he left to go out to Baltimore, he had a VW Beetle he wanted us to sell. And, you know, we drove it, and it had to have the worst set of brakes on any car. And I often joked with him that, you know, the reason he went to Baltimore was easier for him to relocate than to face dad with a car with those kind of brakes. Family was everything to Andy. I think that's probably why he ended up moving back to Milwaukee. I know, you know, he had bought a condo down in St. Pete, and he had spent some time down there before he retired, flying back and forth. And he intended to retire down there. He had his car shipped down there, and I think there was just a strong draw to be back with family. You know, then once you come back here, boy, he just did everything, especially with the nieces and nephews. Take them out to lunches, or he'd meet them for dinner. Even with the siblings, same thing, lunch or dinner. Go to the festivals in Milwaukee, culture events, Milwaukee Art Museum. He lived right across the Milwaukee Art Museum, so he liked to meet and walk through there. But family was important, and especially mom and dad when they were alive. He spent, you know, he called a lot, even if it was just a quick phone call, just to touch base. Family was very important to Andy. The Saturday afternoon before Andy passed away, the doctor was in his room, and he was explaining to us what the treatment was going to be going forward. And Andy looked at him and he said, "Doctor, I don't want no more tests, no more treatments." And the doctor looked at him and he said, "Andy, you understand what this means?" And Andy said, "You know, I've lived a wonderful life. I got to do all the things I wanted to do. I've got no regrets. My mom died of cancer. My dad died of cancer. Now it's my turn." So, you know, he just couldn't do it anymore. And, you know, he was at peace, I think, at that moment. And he said he was happy after the doctor left. He said he was happy with his decision, that he couldn't go on like this, where it was 2 or 3 days in the hospital, 2 or 3 days home, and it was just shuffling back and forth. And, you know, we all miss Andrew. Our whole family misses Andrew so much. It's been hard to comprehend his passing, and the fact that it happened so quick. I mean, we're talking to the doctor on Saturday afternoon, and he passed away early Sunday morning. And I would just like to thank personally, and on behalf of the entire family, the Arundel Community College community, for honoring him with his trivia. He loved working with you guys. He loved Anne Arundel and talked so highly of it. And it's easy to see why with this.
To celebrate the life of a beloved and innovative Andy Meyer, our guest speakers will describe what he did, which is beyond extraordinary, and share the who he was. No impact on me. A man with a contagious nature of love, acceptance, and space to encourage and allow others to be the best they could be. President Lindsay mentioned the movement of the college forward, and what we want to talk about are three areas when we look at Andy: innovation, community, local and national, and excellence. Dr. Smith, before we call up our first guest, Faith Harlan White, another person with three names that I can never remember being dyslexic, can you tell us a little bit about her?
Sure. It's a pleasure to, as I mentioned earlier, from the time I started at AACC, the Division of Continuing Education and Workforce Development under Dr. Meyer's leadership was fully engaged in preparing workers for the 21st century. That is because both Dr. Meyer and his trusted sidekick, Dr. Faith Harlan White, both instinctively and passionately understood the importance of providing a great diversity of learning programs for a great diversity of learners. They were totally in sync with each other and with the new focus on AACC as a learning college, meeting the needs of the workforce and citizenry of the 21st century.
Faith, come on up. Thanks for joining our celebration. It's good to see you.
That's a very difficult family video to follow. That's very emotional. But first, I want to thank both of you for inviting me to be here with you in the college today. I think it's a lovely way to honor Andy, and I think we all have to agree that once this celebration is out on YouTube, that Savannah and Hoda are going to be in fear for their jobs once they see the two of these in a talk show format.
So tell us when you first met Andy.
Well, I worked for Andy for 17 years, and people have asked me if I can remember when I first met Andy. And actually, I can't. I don't have a meet-cute story. I did think about inventing one just to share with you today. But I think it's important to say that in my mind, Andy was always here at the college. He may have been sleeping in the office for all I know overnight, because he always seemed to be here doing something. And I think Andy was the college for me, is the best way to describe it. So when we started together, continuing education was in one building on campus. Andy had an office there, and Andy had two wing chairs in his office for guests or for staff when you came in to chat with him. They were pink damask. I've never forgotten this. And being Faith, I remember thinking, oh, this is really very nice. Where's the fireplace in this office? By the time Andy left, continuing education had 10 permanent offices around the county. We were in over 120 contract and grant sites. The year that Andy retired, we had 33,000 students in continuing education just alone, and I'm speaking about continuing education, and almost 100,000 enrollments that year. So if you think about that over a period of time, if you just pause for a minute, the number of lives that Andy must have touched professionally, it could be 200,000, 300,000 or more students that he impacted by the things that he created.
So many great leaders
Yes.
aren't great mentors. Tell us about Andy and mentorship for those who work for him.
No, wait, I have things to say before the mentor question.
Go right ahead.
There was a script. He's left part of the script out. I never did.
Wait a minute, I get the big bucks here.
Oh, all right. I know. Okay, all right. So from a mentor perspective, Andy was always professional, but some of you may remember if you were in meetings, he could put his glasses down like this and look at you over the top of them, and you always had the impression he was saying, "What were you thinking?" I always found that Andy listened to me, he heard me, he saw me when we were in meetings. When we started new initiatives, we would get so excited we would finish each other's sentences. He painted pictures. He made that vision happen. And what was so empowering was then he turned that vision over to us as staff. And it would be so exciting to work on these things. It was our job then to operationalize it. It could also be terrifying, but it was also very exciting. And so many of the things happened here on campus because of that. Andy had the vision, bigger, better, brighter, and then we would make it happen. And he gave full credit where credit was due always to everyone.
Now mentorship?
All right, in mentorship, Andy was very strong about professional development for the staff and faculty. Many people were able to advance their education while he was supporting their initiatives to do that. And Andy also wanted us to attend and present at conferences. And at many of the continuing education or learning conferences both, there were Anne Arundel groupies who would follow Andy around from one session to another. And if we as staff attended a conference with him, and maybe we'd be helping him set up, the beginning before he started speaking, he'd walk into the room and the energy in the room would change. It was very dynamic, and we'd come along behind him, maybe carrying some of the handouts, but we were also saying, yeah, we're with him. Oh,
So what lessons did Andy leave you with?
Wow, there are so many. I think it's more for me words, and I've alluded some of this already, to how I thought about Andy. I think he was a magician. I think he was a painter of pictures and the future for the college and students. I think he was a builder in so many ways. I mean, it happened with staff, with faculty, with the vision, with actual physical buildings. There's just so many things that Andy would have left. Not everyone gets to say this, but I actually looked forward to going to his meetings. And every time I thought I had done everything I could do at Arundel Community College, Andy would have another one of these moments. He would come up with another idea, and I would say, I want to be part of that. So I looked forward to Mondays. Not everybody can say that. But most of all, Andy was my friend.
Thank you, Faith.
All right.
Yeah,
Thank you very much, both of you.
Thanks so much, Faith.
I am Rufus Glasper, President and CEO of the League for Innovation in the Community College. I am honored to share a few comments about my colleague and friend, Dr. Andrew Meyer. Knowing and working with Andy was an honor and a privilege for me and for everyone on the League staff, both in his time as a League representative and after he retired from Anne Arundel in his work as the League's Vice President for Workforce Development. In talking with the staff about Andy, the list of adjectives to describe him was consistent: personable, likable, professional, and passionate about community colleges and student success. We all appreciated his calm demeanor, his integrity, and his generosity as an empathetic listener and teacher. One of our longtime staff members talked about how over the years she learned much from him about community colleges, their students, and their value. She also informed us that her children went to community colleges. Another staff member pointed out how his knowledge and experience were a rich resource, and she never hesitated to call on him for his insights into the complex or nuanced issues and challenges community colleges face. During meetings, he had a way of making and often winning his point without being pushy. He anticipated problems before they arose and acted in ways that were aligned with his values. He was deeply engaged in his work at the League, and the projects he led built college and community partnerships that had remarkable outcomes and served thousands of students. We're reminded of his loss every day, and as we look for ways to fill the void his passing has left, we know we never really can. He was one of a kind, and we were blessed to have him with us in our work and in our lives. Our thoughts and prayers go out to the family and to all of his friends. And to Andy, our thoughts stay with him today and tomorrow. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Bill Borges. I was Director of Fiscal and Program Compliance, and I worked under Andy directly for about 6 or 7 of my 16 years of tenure at AACC. Andy was always looking for new ways to do things, especially with regard to continuing education. He was very instrumental in expanding our contract education activities. He fostered a lot of professional development among the staff to bring everybody up to date with what was the current issues in education. Andy was a fabulous person with words. He could easily become the lead player in any meeting just by some of the words he used. Give you an example or two. If he was in a group and they were all discussing different ways of approaching a problem, he would sit and he would listen, he would participate, and then there'd be a pause, and he would say, I would be remiss if I didn't say, and I would lean back and I say, the hammer's about to drop. And right away, he had become the center of that meeting just by using phrases like that. Another word he used when he wanted to gain the upper hand, he would use the word fail. Fail is a really loaded word. He wouldn't say, you didn't call me back. You failed to call me back. Perhaps you didn't understand what I was saying. Instead, he would say, you failed to understand my point. And right off the bat, he's up here and whoever he's talking to is down here. So he was great with language skills that clearly put him into a power position. Every year we had an annual continuing education conference. All the colleges across the state would meet, usually in Ocean City, for their annual meeting. Andy made a change one year and he decided that it would be in Baltimore at the Lord Baltimore Hotel. And he went and he did all the booking. What the people at the hotel didn't tell him was that there was another group who had booked rooms there as well. And it was the Sweet Adelines Women Barbershop Quartet for a conference and competition that was being held in the convention center. Everywhere you went in that hotel, there were women singing. You'd get on the elevator and it would be, hello, 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 hello. They would sing in the hallways. They would sing in the lobbies. One time we were in the restaurant and they sang their menu choices to the waiter. I mean, it was driving Andy crazy. He said, Bill, could you talk to the management and figure out how some way they could tone it down or stop doing this? Well, there was no way I could do that. I went out and bought him a pair of earplugs. He was not happy with me. Andy was always open to new ideas. He was always open to being innovative. He spotted trends very early, and he got people to design changes in curriculum, especially in continuing education, very quickly to meet the needs of workforce training, whatever was going on in the world. He was quick to pick up on what was needed.
I'm Jean Runyon, president of Piedmont, Virginia Community College. Andy invited me to join Arundel Community College in 2007 as the inaugural dean of the virtual campus. In 2007, distance education really was about the distance, but Andy saw the vision that distance education really is about the education, and that all students anywhere, anytime, and any place should have access and opportunity to achieve their dreams. Andy was innovative in so many ways, and I think he really saw a possibility. You know, a couple years ago, I was asked to write my 6-word memoir. Many of you know that Larry Smith, the founder of Smith Magazine, asked his readers to do so, and he had been inspired by the legend that Ernest Hemingway had been asked to write a story in just 6 words. So when I wrote my 6-word memoir, I really thought of Andy. And so my 6-word memoir is dream it, do it with heart. And Andy encouraged us to dream. I mean, dream for students, dream for our communities. And when we were able to dream, he always found ways to encourage us to do and to see the possible. And we did. And I think what really stands out for me with Andy is he also encouraged us to do it with heart. It wasn't just about innovation. It wasn't just about change. It was really about what was right for our students. And so when I think of who I am today and how I lead, I always still inspire others to dream. I love to do, but I always remember to do it with heart. One of the things that Andy did extremely well is he made connections. So I think of some of the projects that we worked on together, like the National STEM Consortium or Bridges to Success. He brought people together. And even with Bridges to Success, it was a project with the Open University in the UK, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, what was then UMUC, and he brought all of us together to envision the best for students. And in that particular project, we focused on open educational resources and how we could scale up content so that more students could be successful. So Andy really excelled in making connections, really helping all of us see the vision, to be part of the vision we helped to co-create, and then we were able to do the impossible. There are so many favorite times and favorite stories, but I do remember one thing that he shared with us quite often. Sometimes we'd be together in a meeting and, you know, we were getting a little cranky, and Andy would always say to us, "We take the high road." And that just made us realize again that, yes, in spite of everything, in spite of differences of opinion, it's always important to take the high road and to do what's best for students in our community. And I have to say that I've told many people over the years to take the high road, and I always think of Andy. When I think of Andy, his legacy really is in all of us. I think he changed our lives and shaped who we are today. And I also think he's had a role nationally in shaping the national landscape. When I think of his work with the League for Innovation and the projects of the League for Innovation and the connections that we made for the League for Innovation and how community colleges have changed over the years to really focus on student success and completion and to think of innovative ways to do that, Andy was instrumental in shaping the future for all of us and for our students today.
So Marty, what comes to mind when you heard President Runyon say, Andy encouraged us to dream for our students, and dream for our community?
Well, having heard our guests describe their experiences of Andy and his instinct and proclivity for innovation, you can understand why he was a national leader and a major factor in the college's unanimous selection to the board in the board of the International League for Innovation. But of course, neither Andy nor the college embraced innovation just for innovation's sake. As innovation and creativity were running through his veins, his heart was grounded always in students. Andy was fully committed to doing what was best for students to ensure well-prepared workers and citizens. He knew that, in turn, would build and strengthen community, whether that community is in the office, the organization, in local, state, and federal governments, or in the global community, as you have just heard.
So, you know, I remember the joy in your face and the joy in the Vice President's face when Wally Hall, our next guest, and the longest serving board member, would question you in depth, each of you concerning whatever presentations you were making to the boards of trustees. So tell me the truth. Do you still have nightmares?
Oh, absolutely. Every time I get a root canal, I am thankful to Walter for those experiences because I always say to the dentist, a root canal, that's nothing. Seriously, Walter Hall contributed to the excellence of Anne Arundel Community College, not only through his delving questions, but his astute financial strategies in making AACC at Arundel Mills happen and developing contract training, all to the benefit of the college, its students, and its community. Trustee Hall read, dissected, and understood financial statements as if he was just reading the New York Times. His service to the college and to the community was exemplary. Some people strive for longevity of service. I've got to make that 20 years. I've got to make that 30 years, without regard for what makes up those years of service. Walter's service was indeed extraordinary because he did 36 years, each and every one of those years, fully engaged in contributing and always driven by what was best for the college, its students, and the community.
So Wally, come on up. Don't worry, I got the contract signed with your agent. Everything's fine.
I don't know if I should come up. Maybe people may want to throw some oranges.
So Wally, we're a couple of old
Thank you.
relics, both you and I. For 36 years we've been here, right? In fact, I remember you saying when you started this job that you had hair.
True.
So from your perch on the Board of Trustees for all the years you were there, you had an opportunity to observe Andy Meyer. What did you think about and what did you see as his work ethic at the college?
It's a good question. In life, we meet all kinds of people. And at a community college, you find people with a very dedicated mission and a strong sense of purpose as far as their own life is concerned. And generally, it's focused not on them, but on the community at large. And Andy was a thinker that looked way beyond the immediate community. The world was his oyster as far as bringing opportunities and thinking into the college. He looked beyond the environment of our immediate college and was looking at the world in terms of what can we learn from out there that we can apply and transmit to our students. Mm-hmm. He was an exceptional individual from that perspective and a very strong quality person.
So you would describe Andy as a big picture guy.
Very much so,
Can
yes.
you give us some examples?
Yes. I'll give you one example. He encouraged the college to work with an industry to create an online program for training and development of management that became international and is still working today. And it no longer depends upon the college for its activity and implementation, because the college did such a good job, it was able to become independent. But it's operating and providing people with educational resources out there in the general workforce for a specific industry.
Now, you had some experience with Andy when he was doing some work, or the college was doing some work with the military, correct?
Yes.
Did you ever attend any meetings with him?
Yes. We were looking at the growth of the government agencies out at Fort Meade and at NSA, and recognizing that their presence was going to continue to grow as far as Anne Arundel County is concerned. And I don't know quite why, but Dr. Smith had set up communication with some of the people at the military in terms of their future needs. And Andy and I had a meeting with them to try to get some estimate of just what their educational and training needs might be and what part could the college play in assisting them. And of course, we've seen what's happened as far as the West County is concerned with the government presence at NSA and Fort Meade and so forth. And that was a prelude to the construction of the Arundel Mills facility. And Andy was involved with getting that started and moving the college out, not just to the Arundel Mills, but also to ancillary office accommodations in that area, because we were growing so much at the time.
So the kind of Andy's impact on the college and the benefits of the student was major.
Major, absolutely, yeah, major.
So what resonates with you, Wally, with his passing?
Pardon?
What resonates with you with Andy's passing?
Well, first of all, I thought he had a very nice smile and a very, very pleasant way about him. And he made an awful lot of friends. I don't know anybody that did not like him, right? And I think that, as Faith was saying earlier, that personality won him many, many friends in the college and got people to do what he wanted them to do. And I think that was a real strength that he had. But what was said earlier about him being a big picture guy and going way beyond the confines of Anne Arundel County or even the USA and thinking internationally, I mean, he demonstrated that in his own life in terms of holidays, encouraging the college to move with the Hospitality and Culinary Institute up in Glen Burnie and taking students to Italy on programs there and exposing people who might only have lived all their lives in Anne Arundel County, exposing them to Europe and the restaurants in Italy and so forth. And so I think that he was a unique educator because of his personality and his own nature.
Great. Thank you very much, Wally.
Yeah.
Are they looking for other members on the Board of Trustees? Any interest? Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Walter.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Martha Mattis. I am here as the representative of my late husband, Bill Flynn. Bill was the managing director of an organization called NCCET, the National Council for Continuing Education and Training, which was an associated council of the American Association of Community Colleges. Bill first met Andy in 1993 when they both joined the board of NCCET. And I met Andy socially through Bill. And then when Bill became the managing director of NCCET some years later, we worked together on the council. Bill was founding faculty at Anne Arundel. When he started there, they didn't even have a campus. They were working out of the local high school. So when he got to his first board meeting and saw that there was someone there from Anne Arundel, he immediately went and sat next, introduced himself to Andy, and they sat next to each other in the meeting. And the person who was the chair at that point was not doing a particularly good job. And they kept looking at each other at the meeting and sort of rolling their eyes and shrugging their shoulders. And they get to the end of it. And Bill turns to Andy and says, "Have you ever been in a worse run meeting?" And Andy said, "Never." And Bill said, "You want to go to the bar and have a drink and talk about it?" And Andy said, "Yes." So they went and they each ordered a glass of Chardonnay, and they got to the, towards the end, and the bartender says, "Do you want another glass?" And Bill turns to Andy and said, "Do you want to share a bottle?" And Andy says, "Yes." And that was the beginning of a long and beautiful friendship. What I learned from Andy, and also from Bill, I think, because they were both very good at it, is how important it is to surround yourself with good colleagues and staff, and to really use them and value them and reward them. And because Bill and I were essentially running NCCET together, I was the chief errand runner and gopher. And every time I would go off and do something and come back, Andy would always say, "Everyone needs a Martha." And that was one of my favorite things about him, is everyone needs a Martha. It's you need people to go and do whatever needs to get done for you. He inspired people to be the best that they could be in both a personal and a professional context, I think. And that's a very rare and very valuable quality. And there are only a few people I've run into in my life who could really do that very well. And Andy was certainly one of them. Andy's legacy is the concept of bringing all of your best to any group in which you find yourself. He had an excellent track record, both in personal situations and professional situations, of bringing all of his talents and abilities into the group and bringing out the best in everyone around him to make the experience more enjoyable for everyone and to make the work of the organization more effective. That's why he did the job he did at Anne Arundel for so many years, and why he was so valuable on NCCET and went on to work with the League and the Global Corporate College and a number of other organizations. I think Andy, having grown up in a big family, had this attitude of being able to evaluate other people and appreciate them and get them to work together as a whole. And he brought this to all of his professional associations, also to all of the social situations in which he found himself. And being around him was always a fun place to be.
I'm Denise Reading, and I was the founding president of the Global Corporate College. And I met Andy Meyer as a part of the process of founding the Global Corporate College, and he was the board chair for the majority of the time that I worked in that role. One of Andy's great strengths was he was able to bring together people who had shared values and a kind of shared mindset. And most of those folks were people who were always looking for what was the better, the next, the innovative. And as a result, he created space to let them be. I think if I talked to people at Anne Arundel over the years that we were all working together, they would say, I get to be the best me I can be here because Andy gives us room for that. If it was good for students, if it was good for the college, if it was good for the future of community colleges, then Andy was for it. And so he gave room to people. And so he had this unique way of saying, I'm going to create community by getting out of your way and being somebody who facilitates opportunity. We were together or on the phone daily for almost 10 years. And the one thing I learned was that family really matters. And your family could be defined broadly. Your biological family, his nieces and nephews in Wisconsin, and that we should always honor our mother and father. He even came to Arkansas and met my mother and father, which meant the world to me. The second thing is that, family was also your community that you worked with. Were you fair to your colleagues? Had you treated them well? Had you included them? That was part of family. And so that was one of those big lessons from Andy. Another big lesson that came from Andy that I have to say was that he is the guy who taught me to enjoy life in as much as, and everybody in the room will have had this lesson. If you fly, get points. If you fly, get triple points. If you stay in a hotel, get quadruple points so that you can enjoy life beyond what you might be able to do on your own. So he taught us all the little secret tips to get more out of the life we live. And so that was another one of those great teachings. And then finally, his last big lesson, and this is something he and I shared, and I think is why we were such good friends. If it's the right thing to do, there's a way to do it. And really, there are no barriers to the right thing to do if you are persistent and you're willing to try and put yourself out there. There's no barrier to those things that are the right thing to do. One of my fondest memories would be what I call the end of the day with Andy. Many of you know what I'm talking about. We'd be at a conference with the League of Innovation or the Global Corporate College. We would be out on the road visiting schools. And at the end of the day, at whatever, probably Hilton property that we were staying in, because if Andy was there, that's where we were staying, we would stop at the bar and have a glass of wine. And it was in the end of the day that Andy let his hair down. And you know, his hair was perfectly in place. So when I mean let his hair down, he was funny. He was telling stories. He'd be snapping around. He'd be saying, this is what's going to happen. We're not going to have any of that. And he was just dramatic. And, you know, during the day, Andy was always put together, very professional, tight, kept it in order. But once we had that first, hey, the day is over, let's rejoice, let's laugh about it, let's tease about it. He had this amazing sense of humor. And I cannot tell you, they blur together, because when I say that we literally traveled every month, we talked on the phone every day, sometimes at the end of the day. If I went to Baltimore, I knew where to find him at the end of the day, right? I could find him at that favorite place where everybody knew him. And he was just, you know, he's such a bigger than life presence in those moments. And so I think that it's a string of those moments. You know, end of the day, we watched the presidential debates. End of the day, we watched elections. End of the day, we watched, you know, protests. End of the day, we just summed up this very new entrepreneurial, innovative thing that people didn't always understand that we were doing. And we found room for the dramatic and the laughter. And, you know, to me, those whole moments string together as this beautiful time. Without doubt, Andy Meyer was the leader. He ran in the forefront of this idea around the community college's responsibility to equally pay attention to the development of the workforce as well as to the academic programs. He felt that they were equal in so many ways. And, you know, the Global Corporate College was the first and only entity in the world to guarantee learning outcomes for training and development. No one's ever done it before. No one ever did it after. He helped with his leadership stand that up in less than 12 months. And it became a national best practice that people in the workforce areas at the national level outside of academia still talk about as the model that changed the expectation for learning and education that related to incumbent workers. And for me, to have been part of doing that together on a national level in all 50 states and 40 countries, I think that's a legacy. And today, you know, the pressure for all of us in academia is to say, what are we doing to prepare people for the workforce? And long before that was cool or popular, or the people thought that was the thing to do, Andy was saying, this is part of our destiny as community colleges. So he lived it, he created it, he gave example to it. I think that's part of his legacy.
You see now why people get choked up talking about Andy Meyer and why nobody liked him. So Vice President Patterson, come on up here. So for you, Vice President,
Yes.
it's meetings, meetings, meetings.
Yes, a lot of meetings. So
what
spent a
can
lot
you
of time.
tell us about the man, Andrew Meyer, at these meetings?
Well, first I was in Denver before I came to AACC, and so I had heard of Andy, as many people in the community college did. He was known all over the country, so I was very honored to have the opportunity to come and work with him. And there were 3 vice presidents, myself, Andy, Melissa Beard-Moore, of course, working with Dr. Smith. So we worked together, spent, oogobs of time, hours and hours in meetings. And Andy was, as you've heard, he was just high expectations, very demanding, had all this experience, formal, dignified. That was Andy. So you kind of knew who he was. I used to call him the elder statesman, and I would remind him he was my elder, whenever I had kind of the opportunity. So all of that was true, and that's kind of what you saw up front. Certainly behind closed doors and spending all that time together, we got to see these other sides of Andy. And prior to meeting Andy, I had only given myself an alter ego name. But when I spent all that time with Andy and I would see, I said, he has kind of this snippy, snarky, impatient side. And so when I saw that came out, I told him, I said, you need another name. And I said, your other name is going to be Andre. So whenever we would see that side of him come out, Melissa and I would look at each other and we say, there's Andre. And he would just laugh and he would kind of bring himself sort of back down to being Andy, and we would kind of go on. So it was wonderful to see that side of him and have those experiences with him together. He just had a sense of humor that I think people didn't always get to see, but because we spent so much time together, we got to see that side of Andy.
So do he ever help you in terms of how to deal with problems with people who are underneath you in a role of your support?
So Andy, I had a staff person at one point I was having a bit of an issue with, and Andy said to me, he said, oh, I know what I would do. He said, I'd fire their ass. I said, Andy, I said, no, you would not. I said, you would have Trish do it. Yes, very, very true.
He was always the good guy.
He was always the good guy. He talked tough, but he was always the
So
good
did you
guy.
ever play any jokes on him?
So there was a time, as you heard, Andy, very organized, always tight, very well put together. So I had a meeting one time, and of course, when you met with Andy, you met in his office. And I wanted to meet with him, and I used to tell him, I said, Andy, people are afraid of you. I don't know why they're afraid of you. I'm not afraid of you, but people are afraid of you. So I went into his office, getting ready for the meeting, and his assistant, Erna, would have things laid out for him, and he always had a particular place in his office that he liked to sit. So I said, Erna, what would happen if we move his things and I'll put my things there and let's just see what he's going to do? So and she was really a little nervous about it. I was like, it'll be fine. So he comes in the room, he sees my things there. He says, oh, I don't think so. You remove my stuff.
So we've heard he's an innovator and he had a vision and he was a visionary. So did you ever dream up stuff?
So there was a time that Andy had a dream about starting a new project, and so we all got going. Honestly, it was a good idea. It had some issues. It was a good idea, but it was a dream, and we got it going so quickly. I honestly, in the beginning, didn't know what was happening because it just was sort of outside of the normal process. I said, Melissa, what's going on? And she said, Andy had a dream about starting a project. And I was like, oh my goodness. So I said, Andy, I can't tell people we're moving so fast because you had a dream. And he said, you're a vice president. You'll figure out something.
So what do you
yes.
remember most about him?
So aside from all of those things, I had a great time with Andy. I can just say that, he was the consummate professional, just always just so amazing and steady and just together. And even, these are really high stress jobs, even with the stress of the job, he was just always very, very high functioning and just top quality. And I feel like I'm grateful to have been in the right place at the right time to have the time to work with him. So I'm just honored to be sitting here to have the conversation about him.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So Marty, in the context of excellence, since we're talking about excellence, and Andy Meyer is the beacon of excellence, describe the way the vice presidents work together.
Well, listening to Felicia, I was reminded that I saw the vice presidents, the way they acted and consistently was most definitely an example of excellence. You have to think that they were 3 different personalities with 3 different areas of responsibility and probably 3 different pathways to the table at which they sat. Yet how they operated when they were together as a VP group was really a concrete example of what excellence is all about. They may have had, I'm sure they had, I saw it, diversity of perspectives, opinions, and viewpoints when problem solving and even when assigning resources. And actually that is good. But when it came time for action, decision making, they were bonded by and totally committed to doing what would advance the college on behalf of the students, without exception, which always required each vice president at various times to make sacrifices in their areas to support others. And they did that willingly and regularly because of this commitment to students.
Kelly Comer, come on up. It's been a long time, Kelly.
Been a while.
So based on your 20 years at AACC and your current position of Vice President of Continuing Education and Training, isn't that interesting, at Carroll Community College, you know that college faculty can be a tough bunch, right? So explain to us how a non-academic like Andy Meyer, a continuing education background, could come in and take over the faculty.
Well, I think we'll all remember Andy saying, a student is a student is a student. And it didn't matter whether they were continuing education or a credit student. And he knew that those students deserved the absolute best education possible, and that excellent education was the key to everything. And so that means that he invested in the faculty. He trusted and respected them for their discipline and their expertise. He trusted them as professional educators to know what they were doing, and he provided them with the resources to make sure that they could carry out that mission. You know, and I think Faith mentioned it, when it came to professional development, he never ever said no to professional development to help people grow and be the best they could be for the students. And so that was one of the things that really, you know, he listened to the faculty. He heard what they had to say. When they had ideas, he embraced them, he supported them. And I also think he was a little bit afraid of Jean Turner Schreier.
Everybody was.
And, you know, so he listened to Jean. So, you know, so she scared him into listening to the faculty, I think.
Yes.
So.
I would always say yes.
Yes.
Doctor. So Andy's ability to connect with faculty in this way really displayed the self-confidence he had in himself, is sort of coming from well-being, and his intuitiveness with people, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he could see people's strengths immediately. He could also see your weaknesses, and he would tell you when there was a teaching moment. Some of us may remember teaching moments, but absolutely. And he would bring out the best in people, and he would foster that, and he would also mentor you so that you could become better in other areas. And so he was there to help you along.
And what other ways did he support the faculty to motivate them so that students would get the best of the best?
Well, you know, he would champion successes. That was a very important thing. If you were innovative, if you had success in the classroom, he would send you out nationally, as many conferences as possible, to help spread the word about all the amazing things that you as a faculty member had accomplished. He would look for opportunities for resources for you. I mean, he was the person who championed the National STEM Consortium grant, and Dr. Smith will remember, I think, some cartwheels in the hall when Andy helped the college get a $20 million grant to support the faculty to generate new curriculum that was tied to industry and would prepare our students for the jobs of today and tomorrow.
So regarding your own desire for excellence, which I was lucky to observe myself, what did you take away from your relationship with Andy?
Well, you know, certainly he was a huge mentor to me, and professionally he made the biggest impact. You know, I started out as credit faculty, and now I work full-time in continuing ed. So, you know, he made me understand that continuing education was fun, it was fast, fluid, flexible, and it was very meaningful, and it served people that really deserved to be served. So, you know, those are some of my takeaways. But I have to mention two other takeaways, Marty. One, we all heard that he stood head and shoulders above everybody else. So I have to tell you that we were early for a meeting in DC, and we're standing in line for coffee, and I see him turn around and he starts to mutter, "Where is Kelly?" I'm like, "Down here." I was right next to him in line. But he was so much taller than me that he couldn't find me. Also, and I think we'll remember, he wanted to be the first and only at absolutely everything. And I think Faith mentioned our dean's meetings, and we were in a dean's meeting in the administration building when the earthquake hit. Well, he was the first one out of the building. So those are some of my takeaways from him. But no, he really helped my career, my trajectory, and just helped me become who I am today.
Great. Thank you very much for
Thanks.
joining us.
Kelly.
You know, it's interesting, you heard Denise Redding talk about Andy's legacy is in all of us. You've just observed and heard all of us. You've seen them. You see their excitement, their passion, their appreciation for being given the space. You know how hard that is for a supervisor, the leader, to give space? It's incredible. And that's the result. Those are our people because of Andy Meyer. So Dr. Smith, Marty, BW, bionic lady.
Oh, yeah. I was the one doing the cartwheels to Kelly said.
I know.
Did you hear that?
That was my next line, actually.
Oh, really?
So I had 18 years to observe you. And I had 18 plus years to 23 to observe Andy Meyer. And I watched you two work together. And I watched you be partners and connected as beings and create a new and sustaining paradigm at AACC, which clearly impacted this college. Incredible. You impacted together the local community, the national community. You heard everyone talk about the impact globally. So if Andy was sitting here in my seat, and we all wish he was,
Yeah, we do.
you're looking in his eyes, what would you tell him?
Okay. February 7th, 2023 was not a good day, a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening, because that was the day a huge bomb dropped on so many of us. The news of Andy's passing, shattering our hearts, bringing tears to our eyes, and a sense of loss and despair that left us crumbled and numb. So we reached out to our colleagues and friends and found great comfort in our solidarity around our respect and admiration, and yes, our love of Andy. If you were able to stream the funeral service for Andy on February 11th at the Redeemer Lutheran Church in Milwaukee, you heard the pastor talk about Andy and the action of love. She said, "Remember how beloved you are by God. That freedom allows us to walk in the world with the freedom to love others with openness." And then she added, "A person dies, but a relationship does not. Love does not. Love is stronger than death." It wasn't until Andy and I both retired at our first dinner together that I told Andy I loved him. We were having a wonderful, joyful time, reminiscing. Thank you. And I was thanking him for all of the ways that he had helped me and supported me and cared for me. And I said, "Andy, who you were for me all those years is who you are for me now and who you will always be to me, and I love you." It was natural and easy, and Andy replied, "Marty, I love you too." From then on, every email we sent, every card, every note, every phone call, we signed off with love. You know, for obvious reasons, we can't really express those kinds of feelings in the workplace. There are protocols and policies prohibiting it for sensible, rational, good, solid reasons. Even though when you think about it, the workplace is where our love for each other is most often manifest day after day. It is where we help each other, we support each other, we champion each other, and we care for each other. Maya Angelou is known to have said, "When people show you who they are, believe them." Shoot, man, there's no place like the workplace where people show you who they are day after day, meeting challenges, relying on each other, and going through the good times and the bad. Well, Andy certainly showed us who he was, didn't he? And my, oh my, how we loved our Dr. Meyer, our Andy. If Andy was sitting here, I would tell him, Andy, here are just a few of the many things that we loved about you. First, we loved your integrity. You reminded us by example of what integrity means. Behavior that is consistent with values. You valued truth, so you acted honestly. You valued courage, so you acted bravely. You valued caring about people, so you acted with compassion. Think for a moment of one of your, Andy, most fundamental values. Learning is learning is learning. That is, all learning is important, and thus all learners are important, whether credit, non-credit, certificate or degree, personal enrichment, general education diploma, or English as a second language. Now, for those of you who are not in academia, you may think, well, that makes a lot of sense. But for those of us in academia, suggesting that all learning is of equal importance, well, that's turning higher education on its head. And putting this philosophy and this value into action required full-scale acting honestly and very bravely all the time. I'm very proud to say that your leadership, Andy, in this adventure put Anne Arundel Community College in the national spotlight in a leadership role. Andy, we also loved your intelligence, your wisdom, and your ability to imagine and then make your images real. Given your value on learning is learning is learning, you inspired and supported so many innovative, future-oriented initiatives to meet the needs of tomorrow's workforce, many of which we have heard about today, all helping business and industry, the community and students be prepared for the challenges of the future. A cyber world, a multicultural world, indeed a world where outside the box would be old thinking and there is no box would become the reality. In fact, we are here today where the Gen Z is asking, what is a box? With the vast number of innovative programs that were renovated or created under your leadership, it was natural to think that you had favorites. But in my weekly meetings and budget meetings with you, I never saw that. You understood and felt the unique importance of each program for the value it had and the purpose it served. You often talked about our growing off-campus learning sites and how important it was to be sure that they felt a part of the college and thus required more of your personal attention and personal visits. Once I asked you if there were any you were particularly concerned about, and you said, well, yes. I need to visit the hospitality center on the Amalfi Coast of Italy more often to be sure that the food and wine meet our high standards. Also, Andy, we so loved your commitment to excellence. We loved the pride you took in your work, in fact, in everything you did, which gave evidence of your unshakable commitment to excellence, which your leadership team totally got and in turn took to their teams throughout the division. If anything you did or had responsibility for had even the slightest possibility of reflecting on the college, we could all be sure it would be executed as close to perfectly as possible. Your Associate Vice President, Trish Casey Whiteman, often reminded all of us, that's good enough has no place at AACC. One summer, a little boy's life was saved in our swimming pool because Dr. Faith Harlan White's team did not have just enough lifeguards. They had more than enough. This little guy was never in danger because of that standard of excellence of doing more than enough established by you and executed consistently by your teams. As Vice President for Learning, your commitment to excellence was evident throughout the Division of Learning, perhaps most
Couple wet fingers.
Yeah, that's okay. Perhaps most importantly, as the faculty and instructional staff reflected it in the standards of their coursework, course outcomes, and learning objectives, and expectations that students need to learn, know, and be able to demonstrate knowledge and skills far beyond the minimum. Instead, they need to acquire skills and knowledge at the level needed to be among the best prepared workers in the world. This was evidenced repeatedly by 100% pass rates on health professions, national boards, and industry certifications. And finally, Andy, we loved your class. I suspect that we all value having class. Probably, if we were honest, most of us would like to be known as classy. But it seems that to be genuinely classy, instinctively classy, consistently classy in all you do, well, that seems to come easier for some than others. And take that from one who genuinely comes from the others group. Well, being the overflowing with class kind of guy you are, you would try to help us others whenever we got into trouble. I remember one particular instance when we were in a very, very important meeting with lots of community and business leaders, members of the county council and state legislators, and I was standing at the head of this very large table at a lectern making our presentation when I saw you very discreetly start a note around to me. Now, we always sat where we could see each other. Well, if Dr. Meyer sends you a note while you are making a presentation at a meeting like this, you don't delay looking at it. So when it got to me, I discreetly reached down, turned it over, and saw in big bold print, Dr. Smith, you have your glasses on upside down. So these are the glasses. So you can tell that I thought I was being cool because Andy always wore thin glasses, so I got thin glasses. So these are the culprits. Anyways, it was true. It was true. The one thing I'm sure, Dr. Meyer, you did not do was check for toilet paper stuck to the bottom of my shoe. But I am pretty sure that you assigned that to Kathy Bowman because every time I came out of a bathroom anywhere on campus, or off campus for that matter, at Lowe's after a breakfast meeting or the Hilton after a dinner meeting, there was Kathy with that huge innocent and cheerful smile saying, "Hi, Dr. Smith." As you've heard today, Andy touched so many lives in very powerful and positive ways, and probably barely realized it. I remember that when Queen Elizabeth passed away last year, one of her bodyguards said in an interview with a reporter, "The world is a little less kind without her in it anymore." I feel something very similar with Andy's passing, that the world is a little less good, a little less honorable, and yes, a little less kind without him in it. Yet, as the pastor at his funeral said, love remains. Love is stronger than death. I hold tightly to that reality, and I thank God for it. And I thank God for the gift of Andy in my life.
Death. The only certainty in life. And yet, when it happens, we're shocked. When I hear a celebration of life for someone who's passed, what comes up for me internally is whether that person was celebrated during his or her lifetime. We work most of our lives and spend most of the time during our lives at work. Even so, and for many complicated reasons, there's a tendency to shield a significant part of us, the who we are. Because at work, there's this belief by some that what we do is most important. Synergy of the two, however, occurs by merely opening your heart. You heard it. You've seen it. Simple. It's breathing. It's automatic. It takes no thought. Just being from love. All speakers today expressed in different ways and in their own way, in the same way your image of Andy came up and may have been the same or different of someone else. Because he allowed himself to be in that space. He mastered the synergism between the what we do and the who we are, because he attended his work with an open heart from love. Cahill Brown, in my favorite book, The Prophet, says it the best. And what is it to work with love? It is to weave the cloth with threads drawn from your heart, even as if your beloved were to wear that cloth. It is to build a house with affection, even as if your beloved were to dwell in that house. It is to sow seeds with tenderness and reap the harvest with joy, even as if your beloved were to eat the fruit. It is to charge all things you fasten with breath of your own spirit, and to know that all the blessed dead are standing about watching. Thank you, Andy. May you rest in peace, my friend. So we're going to open the floor to a few people for comments who've expressed a desire to make some comments. But before we do that, I'd like to introduce some of Andy's family and his partner, and I'd ask if each one of you would stand up so people could see you, and that hopefully afterwards, when we're drinking martinis and having cookies, they can communicate with you and you can meet some of the people who worked with him. So Hector Salcido, if you could stand and just let people take a look at you. If you and Lyle and Suzanne Meyer, if you could stand. And Randy Meyer, Andy's nephew. And Arnie Meyer, who is proud to say he is the youngest
Brother.
of the Meyer boys. Dr. Szymanczyk.
Today, we reflect and remember with fondness Andrew L. Meyer. Memories capture life's diverse life through a prism, revealing to us a lifetime journey, teaching us so many of us with his thoughtfulness and love for learning, whether it be on a bus or at 12 midnight, and data respect, changing the curriculum for student success, and learning designs, changing culinary initiatives, and a whole lot more. One innovation, namely the virtual campus, prepped us for COVID. His support for arts, visual and performing, recreated us. His love for language, both foreign and domestic, enriched our living. These short reflections end with his fervent vision: learning is learning. Is learning.
Connie Kangas.
Sort of like in the office with Dr. Meyer, and he was never Andy to me, even after we left and we communicated through emails and he said he could be Andy, he was Dr. Meyer. And, and he called me Connie Lou. My middle name is Marie, I don't know. But I was always Connie Lou. And he was very professional, and I'm just me, little old me. And I just took care of CC10s, the beloved CC10s at the college. Everybody loved them. And so he is from Wisconsin, and I was born in Wisconsin. It's my favorite place on earth because my relatives are there. I never lived there. So we had that in common, and we just sort of had this little bantering relationship. And people in the office who seemed to be afraid of him were just stunned at our little bantering that was going on. And when we were in the admin building, there's this big square, so you could walk around it. And I sat over here, and he would come in and walk down, and I would say, "Good morning, Dr. Meyer." And then he'd get to the other side, he'd say, "Connie, you need to be professional." Oh, okay. So we just kind of carried this little thing on. And we always celebrated birthdays every year, and for all the staff. And of course, he didn't want us celebrating him, but I insisted. And so I would go to his door and say, "We're going to celebrate your birthday." And I'd start saying, "Connie Lou, no. Yes, yes, come on out, because we're going to come in." So he would come out. So after I left the college, we all went our separate way. His birthday was, unfortunately, 9/11. And so every year on 9/11, I would send him an email. And the subject line would be "Happy Birthday." And I would say, "Happy birthday to you." And I would say, "I'm singing to you. Can you hear me, Dr. Meyer?" And he would reply back. And one time, his car broke down in Glen Burnie. And I don't know if it was just because I was the most available to go get him or the least afraid to go get him. But so I drove up to Glen Burnie to pick him up and bring him down to the college. And I'd had an issue with a photographer in Milwaukee. And so we were discussing that. And finally he said, "Connie Lou, we better stop talking about this because you're not using your blinker anymore." Oh, okay. So very, let's follow the law. But we got to Severna Park, and there's lots of traffic there, and there's 2 lanes, but then eventually there's one that merges. And he's like, "Connie Lou, get over there and you can get ahead." "Dr. Meyer, why should I get ahead of them? They were, I'm not special." "Oh, Connie Lou." So we just had this fun little relationship, and I always enjoyed him. Towards the past few years, he started calling. Well, he wanted to talk. He said, "I'd like to hear your voice again." So I gave him my number, and he called, and he said, "You know, when you come out here to visit your daughters, I could drive you to their house, because that would be like 90 minutes away." I said, "Well, that's quite a trip." "Oh, no, I would like to. But you can't talk the whole time." Okay, okay. So one of the last times, probably the last time I talked to him, he called, and he said, "Connie Lou, you ready to go back to work?" "No, Dr. Meyer." I said, "My memory's really bad now." "Oh, yeah?" So we had this little conversation and talked about things. It was funny that he, while we were working, and I kept saying how wonderful Wisconsin was, "Why don't you go back to Wisconsin? And it's so beautiful. It's the best place in the..." "I'm not going back to those winters." "Dr. Meyer, but it's the best..." "No, I'm not going back to those winters." And so one time I had probably emailed him after a big storm in St. Petersburg and said, I hope your place is okay. I hope everything's okay." "Well, I'm living in Wisconsin now. I went back for family." I said, "Well, good." And he talked about how the family, I thought it was a pretty regular thing, everybody getting together and all his nieces and nephews and everything. So family is pretty special, and it was great that he was there. But anyway, we got off this phone call, and he called right back. And I said, "Hello?" And he said, "Who were you just talking to?" I said, "You." He said, "Who am I?" "Andy Meyer." "Oh, well, I just wanted to see if you could remember who you were talking to." I said, "Well, even if I couldn't, my phone said Andy Meyer." But this is the last response he had given me in an email. I had said something, you know, "Happy birthday, and I'm sorry it's such a sad day for the world that that's your birthday too." And he said, "You are so sweet. Thank you for the email. Yes, I have been a bit bummed today, since my memories take me back to the days of Anne Arundel, the best job and people in the world." And then he said, "And I'm going to check Amazon to see if I can get an ankle bracelet for you. Every time you come into Wisconsin airspace, I want to be alerted. That way I can take you to lunch or dinner, and you can sing happy birthday to me in person, even if it's in February in Milwaukee. I'm going to call you sometime so we can talk about Wisconsin puffy clouds. Problem is, it will be after the sun sets, given your sleep schedule. I'm up all night." But he did text me on beautiful days when those blue skies and those white puffy clouds, he would send me pictures of them. He goes, "Beautiful day in Wisconsin, look at those clouds." So I was stunned to get the news. I was just getting ready to go out to Wisconsin to celebrate my birthday, my granddaughters, and every time I go out, it's like, you know, I have all these things I have to do. I have relatives to visit. I'm thinking, will I be able to get down there to see him? And then I get this call, and it's like, no, that's not happening. And now I'm going out next week again, and it's like, it's just so bizarre that I'm thinking I'm taking that trip, and he's not there, and I don't even have the opportunity to see him. But I was really grateful to have the opportunity to work with him here and to banter.
Maria, would it be okay if you do your last name?
Hi, good afternoon. I am Maria Ozimkowska, originally from Poland. And I would like, first of all, say sorry to the family. I have not seen Andy for many, many years. But I met him in 1983. And I was a new refugee coming from Poland, spoke very, very poor English, and signed up for, at that time it was Community College of Baltimore, for English as a second language. And Andy was my teacher. And after 3 months, I think, or so, he opened a position and asked me to apply for probably called office assistant, and they needed a translator. At that time in the US was a big group of, thousands of Polish refugees, because this is 1983 where, the movement started in Poland and Wałęsa, and then martial law was proclaimed. So we worked together for 4 years probably, because then I moved out to another city. But when I heard of his death, and we reconnected in 2000 on the social level. But the first years, first of all, I was always forever grateful to Andy to open the door of opportunities to me, because this was my first job in the United States. As I said, my English was so bad that at that time, as you know, the offices were paper only and black fonts. So when somebody called and nobody picked it up in the continuing education because we shared space, I was afraid to pick up the phone because of my English. And Andy would say, listen, as long as you understand them, don't care that they don't understand you. And he encouraged me, he believed in me, and from then on, I actually even made a comment one time, I am sorry, I do understand you, so it is your problem if you don't understand me. So they were precious, precious years. Whenever he went to Milwaukee, which is such a Polish city, I don't know if it is now, I have never been there, he would bring me sausage from a Polish butcher. I am vegetarian now for many years. At that time, I was probably still enjoying. And on the professional level, so of course, I don't have all those memories that you guys have, professional and so forth. I love working with him because he was humble. He had this office with huge chair at the time, big desk and paper. Whenever he was not there, he said, because I said, outside of the office, they didn't even have office at the college for that department. And he would say, just move to my fancy office, and sit behind. So I would have sometimes a week sitting there and being his boss. But I remember that he really built the ESL department within the Community College of Baltimore. And he was loved there not only on professional level, but because he was so innovative. He didn't take anything for granted. And as you said, he was very elegant, very classy. I remember him walking. I still remember, you imagine, 83 to 85. He would walk in always dressed up with his scarf, marching and we were similar age, actually, young people in 30s, and so he had vision. And the department, by the time he left, actually, Community College of Baltimore, he was known for, building, developed the ESL program. He had great teachers. They were, very, very proud of him. And the whole college, I remember I have twin daughters, and they were like 4 years old at the time. He organized some kind of meeting with the kids, pictures, and posted in some CCB newsletter to bring the ESL program, up and being recognized. On the private level, he loved parties. I went to his few parties. He had excellent friends, very flamboyant and wonderful people, and always was style. The last time I think I saw him was in Baltimore when he lived on Charles Street because then I left for Africa and didn't come back after many years. So I am really grateful to whoever somehow posted that I was able to learn about his passing, and it's of course very sad news because it's actually many of us that generation, and I feel like he really died very young and he could still live longer. So thank you very much for listening and having me here. Thank you.
So I'd be remiss if we, Dr. Smith and I, did not tell our appreciation to everyone that helped. Failed to tell. Wait a minute. Failed to tell. The people that really helped us put this program together. Dr. Lindsay, Don, you know, having your support was extremely important. Obviously, having you do the welcome is appreciated. I know you didn't have a relationship with Andy when you came and he was going. And so the following entities or divisions, departments in the college that helped was the Anne Arundel Community College Foundation, the dining services, martinis are here, right? The event services, the facilities, HCAT, which is Hotel, Culinary Arts and Tourism Institute. We wish we were doing this in Italy right now. Information services and strategic communications. And I want to make a shout out to Dan Baum, the executive director, who is just awesome. They did these videos. They worked with us in getting everything organized, and Allison Bombash as well. Max Asas and Sons were very helpful with us and information we needed. The planning team, and I'll just name these individuals: Melissa Beardmore, Kathleen Bowman, Suzanne Boyer. A shout out to Suzanne, who was incredible. And all these individuals had a day job, you know. Trish Casey Whiteman, Faith Harlan White, Kelly Comer, Kip Kunzman, Erna Ray, and Laura Widener. And obviously a major, major shout out to Bionic Woman here. It's great having you back. We all appreciated what you did and how you led, and you being here. You've got a long drive, and you made it a few times.
Yeah,
so
thank you, Marty.
Thank you very much. And so now what we'd like to do is...
well, can I just say one more thing? I was reminded by Wayne and his wife Terry in a conversation I had with them that Andy's word for his highest compliment was fabulous. Some of you may remember him saying fabulous. Oh, that place is fabulous. And they were describing how he used it, and I said, yeah, now that you mention it, I remember that. I remember him using it mostly in terms of describing restaurants and dishes from various restaurants. But I wanted just also to recognize our fabulous hosts. And maybe you could just join me. I'm going to say thank you so much. You are, and then we'll all say fabulous, okay? Marty Snyder. So thank you, Marty, very much. You are so fabulous. Thank you.
All right, let's drink.